Hi, in this tutorial I'm going to demonstrate where to go to get Xcode installed on your computer, and then we're going to look at how to create a simple Hello World app. So when you open up the App Store, what you want to do is go up to the right hand corner where your search box is and type in Xcode, and it will bring up a list of results. And the only one that you need in order to develop apps is the official Xcode app from Apple. Now mine says that it's already installed. If you had it installed before, you might have to do some updates in order to get the most recent version. Or if you haven't installed it at all, then there'll be an option in there to get it. It is free, so you don't have to pay anything for Xcode. Just like installing any other app from the App Store, you would click on it, it downloads it, and it installs it on your computer. So we're finished with the App Store, and I'll assume that you were able to get Xcode installed. So the next thing is to actually open up Xcode. So I'm going to quit the App Store. And then to open up Xcode, you need to go into your Applications folder. So if you open up your Finder, you want to go to Applications, and then from there you should be able to scroll down and find Xcode, and you will double click on that in order to open it up. Okay, so when we open it up, we have options to create a new Xcode project or to check out an existing project. Also, you want to note in here on the welcome screen the version of Xcode that you are using. So as of this video, we're at 5.0.2. So whatever you see demonstrated in here will work for this version. As Apple updates things, there may be some slight changes and differences in your screens. So we're just going to start a simple little app to get started. So we'll create a new Xcode project and go through the steps to get started. Okay, when we do that, we have a template for a new project. Now you want to make sure that you are on the iOS section and that you have applications selected over here. If you're going to create an iPhone or an iPad app, you want to be in iOS and application. And when we do that, it gives us a set of predefined templates that already have some things pre-created and ready for you to use. So in this example, we're just going to do a simple utility application. Right? As we go into some other tutorials, we'll use some of these other templates for different reasons. But just to get started and have it do something kind of cool, we're going to choose a utility application. And these give you little descriptions down here about, what each of these different templates will do. So I'm going to click Next. And we're going to give it a name. So in the tradition of creating your first application using Hello World, instead we'll say Hello Xcode. And your organization name can be anything that you want to call it. And your company identifier is usually a reverse domain name, so com.something. It ends up creating a unique bundle identifier when combined with your product name. So you can see here my bundle name is my company identifier dot and then the name of my project. Class prefix, we don't really need to change anything in there for this. Devices, we can set it for iPad, iPhone, or universal, meaning it would be for both. So for simplicity purposes, we're just going to keep it with an iPhone right now. We don't need to worry about core data for this application, so we're going to click Next. And then it's asking you where do you want to save the file. So I'm just going to keep it on my desktop so I can find it easily. So I'll click Create. So after you've created your project in Xcode, this is the user interface that displays. So we'll start by just reviewing the different parts of the screen and how they function, because this can look a little intimidating if you've never used this application before. So first of all, across the top we have the toolbar area, and this displays your project status. It will show you when it's running something on a simulator or actual device, and also display warnings and error symbols. Then on the left hand side we have the Navigator, and the Navigator is where you can manage your files and groups as well as other information related to your project. The center part of the screen is the editor, and that's where you'll be able to change your content code. This is also where you can modify the screen layout and user interface design. Along the right we have a utility panel, and this provides quick access to different objects, help information and properties. And then at the bottom, which we don't see right now, there will be a debug area, which if there's a problem with your code during execution, we'll have messages and warning information that pops up there. As we start to build, we'll take a look and see what that looks like. There's a lot of different settings that we're not going to get into in this introductory video. So as you get deeper into your development process, you'll start to look and change and modify some of these settings. So for right now, let's just run a test to see what happens with our app right out of the box. Right, we used a utility template, and so there are some settings in there that created a specific type of app for us. So to run this, right, on the toolbar at the top, we can select different options for how we want to run this in our simulator. So I'm going to come up here and I'm just going to do the Retina 3.5 inch. And then we click on the Build and Run button. Now it doesn't look like much, but it actually did a lot of work for us by choosing that template. So we have our first screen, and then we have an info button. When we tap that, it flips to the other side or to another view screen or view controller, and then we can click the Done button to flip it back. So there's actually a lot of work that's already done in there in order to create that. So we're going to work a little bit with customizing this app. So I'm going to move this off the screen for right now. Also, I wanted to point out some important information about your file system. Right, we have in your Navigator panel over to the side, you can see the file structure that's set up here with different code and interface files. And this is the actual folder of project files that was created by Xcode. So if I open this up, I just want to show you the structure of how these project files are created. The Xcode test files, we won't be working with those at all, so you don't really need to do anything, but don't delete them. Right, we have a hello xcode.xcodeproj file. So this is the file that if you double clicked on this would open up your project in Xcode. But the other files that go along with this project are in the project folder name. Now if I expand this, you can see that it has a lot of the same files in here: app delegate, flipside view controller, main view controller, but it will not always mirror exactly what you have in the Navigator. So until you become more familiar with the structure of project files and folders and how they all interrelate to each other, I would avoid making any changes to any file names or any folder names in this structure. You can make folders and add information in the Navigator, and that will not always be a mirror view from one to the other. So that will help you to avoid some possible problems down the line. So all of your changes that you make and edits that you make, you should be doing within Xcode as opposed to working directly in any of the files in this structure. Okay, when we ran it, you can see this is the debug area that popped up down here, and so this is resizable and you can move things around. If you want to get rid of this debug area, you can click on the little triangle here to hide it. You can clear the content that's in the debug message area by clicking on the little trash can. Okay, next we're going to focus on customizing our app a little bit. So we're going to go in your Navigator and find the main.storyboard file and just click once on it to select it. And it will open up the Storyboard View, which is your user interface. And you can see here, right, we have our main view controller, which was the first screen that had our little button at the bottom. And then when that was tapped, that took us to the flip side view controller. And then when you tap the done button, it comes back to the main view controller. Right? Each of these screens that you have in iOS application development will be a view controller, right? They have their own views, and then actually they're their own code files that go with each view. So for example, main view controller here, we have main view controller header and implementation files. And so these are the code files that go along with the main view controller. And then the flip side view controller has its own header and implementation files, and that will control the flip side view controller. So we're not going to get into any coding today or in this example, but just so that you have a rough idea of how these are related to these different views. So we're going to customize this a bit, and what I'm going to do is we're going to add some text in here, we're going to have an image, and we're going to customize the button. Now I want to point out that as we work in here, there are some icons down here that you can use for setting up your user interface and how you're viewing it. And right now we are viewing it in the 4-inch screen size. And we can toggle this back, and you can see this is Apply Retina 3.5. So if I click on this, right, we can see that the view got shorter. So this toggles it back and forth between the two different screen sizes for an iPhone. So let's begin by adding some content to our main view controller screen. Now on the utility panel over to the side, at the bottom here we have a few icons for template files. There's code snippets that are for some commonly used pieces of code, and you can add your own as you start to find things that you do regularly. We're going to be focusing on the object library. Right there, Apple has given us some predefined objects. So let me just move this up so we have a bigger list here to view. Right, these are predefined objects that we can grab and use in our apps. And we're going to start off with a few simple things. Like I'm going to grab a label, right? If I tap on these, get a little pop-up that has a description about what that object is. And so this is a label, and its object name is a UI label. When you see UI, you can think to yourself user interface. User interfaces are things that will be on the screen. So to use a label, I'm just going to click and drag it over onto my screen. And as you see, when I start to drag, I get little alignment tools. This shows me this is the center of my screen. As I have other elements on there, it'll show me its relationship to other elements there. So I'm just going to stretch this out, and we get some nice little helpful tools like for alignment and width and height attributes. Right, and now I have dark text on a dark background, so not too easy to read. So with this label selected, right, in the utility panel, there are several different views for information that you can look at. And we're going to focus today on the attributes inspector. So you want to make sure that is tapped. And now I'm going to move this back down so that we can see more of the attributes for our label. So it says label. This is the text that's in the label. So I can change the text here, or I could double click directly in here. I think before I go any further, I'm going to change the color so that it's not dark on dark. So I'll click on color. I can go in and choose recently used colors. You can also go to other, and then we get color pickers. You know, we can choose from crayon colors and sliders and spectrums. So we have a lot of different options for your color settings. If you have something else on your screen that you want to grab the color from, we can use the little magnifying glass, and we could come down and say if I wanted to pick out this gold color, I could click on that to choose the gold color. I'm just going to come back up here and I'm going to pick white to make it a bit easier to see on our screen. Right, then to edit my text, I'm just going to double click on it, type in my text and click off of it. Now if I want to center, I can come over here and choose the center tool. I can edit, increasing the size. Right, so a label is good for small amounts of text, 1, 2, or even a few lines. You can see in here we can have it, we can increase the number of lines that would be available. For larger amounts of text, right, if we scroll down in here, there is a text view, right, UI text view, and it has multiple lines of text. So I'm going to click done. I'm going to grab a text view over here and drag it onto my screen. And you can see how this shows the alignment again with centering. Now with this selected, on our attributes panel, we can see we've got some Greek text in here. Now to customize this, you can certainly just delete the text that's there. I want to add a little bit up here. Say I want to say something like heading. Now if I press enter, it thinks I'm finished editing in here. In order to move this text down another line, you hold down the control key and you do control enter. Right, so if I wanted a little spacing in there. And I'm going to copy some of this other text in here, and I'm going to come down to the bottom, and again I'm going to do control enter and paste in another line or two, just so that we have a little more content in here to view. And you can see that the text is updated. And let's take a quick look and see what that looks like in our simulator. So I'm going to stop running the simulator and then click the build and run button again. And here is our updated app. And the text view, the UI text view, is set up so that it will scroll if it all does not fit within the view. So that is the default setup. A little bit more with customizing this. Of course, you can change the font color, and we can change whether it's centered or right aligned, so not a whole lot of options in there. You can go in and play with the attributed text, where you can select certain words and then you can come up and change things like the color. So if I wanted that one word to be a different color, and then you can add background colors to text, and then there's more formatting options in here that you can play around with as well. So the text here has a white background and black text. So if I wanted this text to maybe be white, I'm going to change this back to plain for now. And I'm just going to make the text color all white. And it's going to be white on a white background, so that's why it disappears. So let's come down and change the background. Now I can change the background color to another color, or I can change the opacity on it. So maybe I don't want any background color and I just want the text right over the background. So I can adjust the opacity. Let's run that in the simulator and see what happens, right? This looks nice. Okay, let's do a little modification on the flip side view controller. So if I click over here, now what I'm going to do here is add an image. So in our object library, I'm going to choose an image view, and I'm just going to click and drag it over into the flip side view controller, and I'm just going to adjust the size of it, maybe down a little bit. Right, so it says UI image view. Now in order to put an image in here, I have to add images to my application. So I have a couple of images that I'm going to pull in. One for my button and one for my image view. So let me pull them in here. So these are two images that I want to add to my app. So if they were in another folder or something, I would have that folder open. To make this easier, I just have them on my desktop. So what I'm going to do is to select those images, and I'm going to drag them over here, and I'm going to put them on top of the supporting files folder there and release it. And then this pops up. What you want to do is make sure you always check off copy items into destinations group folder. Otherwise, it doesn't actually put the images into your application, and it's going to refer to it wherever they're stored on the hard drive of your computer. So you always want to make sure you check off to copy them into the group folder, and then click Finish. And you can see under supporting files we've got the photo button, and then we have the monster graphic. Now you can create other folders inside your Navigator. So if you were to have a lot of images, it might be helpful to have them all grouped together. So what I'm going to do is just right click in the Navigator section in here and choose New Group, mix a new folder, and I'm just going to call this Images. Right, and then I can drag these two images right into that folder. So now I'm going to go back to my storyboard, and I'm going to choose my UI image view. And on the attributes panel, right, the first thing is image, so I'm going to choose monster and put it in. And it's a little bit out of proportion. It's kind of stretched up there. There are different view modes that you can change here. There's scale to fill, aspect fit, and aspect fill are going to put it into proportion. So if I do aspect fit, this is the proper proportions. Aspect fill is going to make it larger to fit within the space of my UI image view. Okay, so now I have my image in here. Next, let's customize the button. So I'm going to select the button, and on the attributes panel over here to the right, you can see that the type is Info Light. We want to do a custom button, so we're going to choose custom. And down here there's an image option, so we're going to choose image, and it'll show us all the images that are available in our project, and I'm going to choose the photo PNG image. Okay, now that we have this customized, I'm going to stop the simulator and let's run it again. Right, so we have our text area, we've got our custom image for our button, flips over, and we need to customize the title, so, and then we can do done to go back. So let's continue customizing title. We can double click on it and we can change it directly in here, or we can change it here. So I'm just going to put my name in there again. Okay, so we've completed the customization. So I'm going to run this in the simulator again. We'll give it another test. All right, and we're able to go back and forth. Now we've been testing this on a Retina 3.5-inch screen. And remember, when we looked at this, we have the option of switching between 3.5 and then back again to a 4. So let's run this in a 4-inch screen and test and see what it looks like. So I'll stop the simulator and run it again. Now it loads up a new simulator. And so this is what it will look like set up for a 4-inch screen. Now, as you progress through, we'll look at some of the more complex ways of setting up things to spread out differently for different size screens, but we have a fairly simple layout right now. So that is a basic overview of installing Xcode starting a new project, and creating and customizing a basic utility app.